Hello, thank you for joining our webinar today, The Three Pillars of Trust. And thank you for those that are watching this in replay. Thank you to our customers, our employees, our partners, our advisors, and all the friends of the firm that have given us an unlimited amount of guidance, direction, and trust. We look forward to those that we haven't had an opportunity to serve, to earn your trust and to partner together. Before we dive into this individual webinar, this webinar is in a series of leadership webinars. You can watch these in any order or watch them one off, all good. So today's webinar, Three Pillars of Trust. When we think of trust doesn't just magically happen. It's a skill that leaders, analytic leaders in general, develop with their team. They also need to learn trust in order to develop that trust with their team. By consistently displaying trustworthiness, your team to confidently know what they can expect from you. Whereas inconsistent behavior breeds doubt and suspicion and erodes trust. Part of this is to treat mistakes as learning opportunities. Rather than assigning blame, finger pointing, yelling, screaming, swearing, examine what was learned and what can be done differently in the future. Not just talk about how things could be done differently in the future. Maybe you have to enact new policies, new procedures, new checks and balances so that you're able to avoid that mistake and whatever costly pain occurred to you and the team and the organization is avoided in the future. And really treating those mistakes as learning opportunities that perhaps without trust was a very fearful, scary situation, which then translates into a culture of being afraid, being on pins and needles. When you apply trust and empathy, that really moves your organization forward into one of innovation, trust, and safety. Really creating that culture of safety and trust is to communicate openly, clearly, and transparently as possible, and as often as possible. Really clear communication reduces misunderstandings, and sharing that information shows that you trust people with knowing the details. So instead of telling people only what you think they need to know, tell them the story, tell them the why. Really, that why is what is going to help you to better understand the communication that is coming from other parts of your organization, and also to help you to clearly articulate the why behind your decisions or your team's decisions at the end of the day. Because in absence of knowing the logic and the reasons behind the decision, people will make up their own versions of the truth, which is usually more negative than reality, more gossipy than truth. It doesn't bode well for an organization, nor does it help on a project. I'm Mike Jellin. I've been in the data and analytics space for a couple of decades now, really helping organizations build trust, build empathy by focus on analytics and value creation. Here at AICG, it's really our people, our process, and yes, technology, but it's all about the customer and the customer's business or organizational use cases. Technology is great unto itself, but it isn't valuable or as most valuable as it could be until it's implemented to help an organization achieve those different use cases. Those use cases could be positive use cases of getting into new lines of business, operating more efficiently. Other things could be addressing customer dissatisfaction. Perhaps you're having issues with product or a particular vendor in your overall bill of materials that make up a product. Identifying those issues with data and to really solve those business problems to help deepen your relationships with customers. Make those customers happy because they're excited You delivered what exactly they thought they were getting, what they paid you to deliver. You're able to do that. Customers are excited. They love the customer support. They love the frictionless journey they're having with you as their partner, as their customer. And it's really through those partnerships that we have with you and our other customers, driving that ROI from those technology investments is really where we're providing that business value to you and to your customers. So the 3 pillars of trust. Let's dive a little bit further into that. It's really important to define trust. What does this really mean? We look at a clinical definition or textbook definition of trust. It's really the reliance on character, ability, strength, or the truth of something or someone. Or another way to put it, one in which confidence is placed. You place your confidence in that person, in that team. They in turn place confidence in you, into other parts of the organization, into the company as a whole, which fosters that innovation that we talked about, fosters that safety, fosters that team playing, and really being prideful of their work and what they work for and what the mission is. So the first pillar, and the pillar of trust, is transparency. And really, transparency enhances that credibility. When a company is transparent, it establishes its credibility and makes really the stakeholders, everybody, inside and outside of the company, more likely to trust its communications and intentions. You hear time and time again, whether it's crisis management or just being proactive, owning up to when something didn't go well or right. And sure, it might have been embarrassing or is embarrassing for the company or organization, but owning it, saying we made a mistake, and being proactive and not reactive, waiting for some hit piece in a newspaper or online article, a blog post to come out to tell the world about the bad news. Being proactive for you, the company, to say, look, here's what happened. We own this. Here's our plan to make it better for you, customer. You hear of data breaches. Oh, username and passwords may have been compromised. So we're going to put you on a credit watch. Well, that's great. But the first place you hear about X millions of credentials potentially being hacked, you don't want to hear about that from some random person on a blog post or social media talking about that. You want to be the one to not control, but to be proactive. It enhances your credibility. But secondly, transparency also fosters loyalty. That transparency we just were talking about builds the trust, which in turn creates that loyalty among your customers, your employees, and your partners. And those stakeholders are more likely to remain committed to a company that they trust. Everybody understands that we're all going to make some mistakes along the way. It's how you handle yourself and how you handle you as a company in general or an organization, how you respond to those stakeholders fosters that loyalty. But it also helps improve decision-making. Being transparent encourages that open communication with the feedback. Of course, respectful feedback, but being open to the feedback. Challenging decisions so that you can make better decision-making, but thoughtfully. Not saying, oh, that's a silly idea or that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Coming up with or asking the question, well, why are we deciding that? How did we get here? Are we using data? Are we using gut feel? Are we using a sample size of 1? Are we using a sample size of hundreds or thousands or more in order to help with our decision-making process? Because when you do that, make better decisions, it mitigates the risk. Because you're transparent, you can address issues because people are involved in the communication, they're providing communication, that two-way, you're having a conversation, not just a top-down, this is the way you have to do it. Don't ask any questions. It's not your job to ask questions. Just do as you're told. That can increase and add risk and avoid those issues and really those crises by mitigating those risks. And at the end of the day, it's really strengthening those relationships with that trust whether those are stakeholders that we talked about earlier with customers, employees, and partners. And this transparency really helps build, but then you need to maintain that trust. So all 5 of these, not just a one time, hey, we're good as an organization, we checked the box, we did it one time around this one project or this 1 year. Keep iterating, keep doing it. That cycle of transparency. We look at the keys to the open communication, those regular updates. Well, what are those regular updates? Project updates, company performance updates, maybe changes. Whether that changes, we've needed to make an adjustment relative to the economy or what our customers are saying. Or we went through a merger and acquisition, went through a divestiture. Providing those updates, keeping people informed. And remember that two-way communication, not just one way. And using clear language. When we say clear language as part of that open communication, making sure that everybody understands what is being used and what is being told as part of the communication. You have honest and accountability. Talked about acknowledging those mistakes. Mistakes are going to occur. It's inevitable. Acknowledge them immediately and explain the steps taken to address them. Talked earlier about adding in those additional processes or controls so it doesn't happen again. But you're taking that responsibility because it's keeping yourself accountable, holding others accountable. But as part of that accountability, learning from those mistakes, asking what happened, why did it happen, so that you can make the appropriate decisions so that does not happen again. You, of course, want to make that information very accessible. Don't just have a report or a presentation, a quarterly presentation, an annual presentation. Publish regularly. It could be monthly. It could be about your project updates, your company performance. How are things trending? Yes, if you're a publicly traded company, you have to be mindful of how much you share on a regular basis and what you're sharing. However, there's definitely plenty of great information that you could be sharing. Talk about those wins. Talk about those lessons learned. Talk about the things that we're thinking about as an organization. People understand if we're thinking about something, that doesn't mean we're going to do it. Maybe we will, but maybe we won't. But if it's a big deal, you don't want the rumor mill to take over. So make sure that information is accessible and engage those stakeholders. Figure out a way to provide that two-way communication. The larger the organization, the more you have to really work hard at getting that two-way communication. And not just listening to the people that, when you think of a pyramid structure within an organization, those that are closer to the top, those are the only people's opinion that matter. Those people at the top should be getting out and going as far and wide and deep into the organization to meet with people, to understand what is the sentiment, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that are not being heard or being made aware of. A lot of times, if you have a very bureaucratic organization, in order for all these great ideas with people working in various parts of the organization that don't have a senior title of some sort, to be able to get their opinion and their feedback from those that are working the closest and actually picking up the phone and shaking the hands of your customers and your partners and those potential customers and those potential prospects. They're on the front lines, taking those phone calls at the oddball hours when things aren't going well or the customer has a question. That is where, in the trenches, great ideas for efficiencies, innovation, truly lie within an organization. So engaging all of those different folks and asking your partners as well, your external partners, how are we doing? How can we help you? Having that two-way, you give us feedback, we'll give you feedback, because we want this relationship, one, to be a true partnership, not just an order taker. You don't want that to be a transactional relationship. And the second pillar of trust is the consistency. So really that role of consistency is in predictability. That consistency, not just once a year or even once a quarter, is when you hear communication. What's going on? Whether the economy is doing great or the economy is not doing well, or your business or organization is doing well or not doing well. That predictability of, yes, I'm going to hear from how are things going. Even if it's not great news, I still want to know how it's going, because I'm invested. I'm invested in you as a partner, as a customer, or as my employer in the company that I support, and I'm behind the mission. I want that predictability in those communications. I also want the reliability, the information that we're being told and shared. One, I'm being heard. I had this idea. I had these level of questions. They were answered. We had a conversation. My idea, perhaps it wasn't as good as I thought it was. And somebody said, hey, Mike, great idea. That's just not what, doesn't align with A, B, and C. And here's the why. Explain your decision. Not just, well, at this time, we're going to put your idea in a parking lot, and maybe in the future we'll come back. That's placating the person. So it's really that consistency and that reliability that's also helps with the trust, which naturally leads to your reputation. All the things that we've talked about so far is either going to enhance the company or organization's reputation, or it's going to eat away at that. The consistent track record of behavior and performance really builds that positive image in the eyes of your customers, employees, and partners. And naturally, fairness. It's that consistency of those stakeholders ensures fairness. When you think of the different policies and actions, every company has policies that are written that they also need to be followed. And the actions need to align with those policies. But they also need to be applied uniformly, not just for, oh, this team is doing really well financially in the company because they're bringing in A, B, and C revenue, but this other part of the company is not. Looking at how you're going to address those, and not to go out of bounds one way or another with excessive celebration or excessive adjustments. People want to be felt respected and valued within their organization, which leads to those long-term relationships. It's not about a transaction. Whether you're an employee, I'm not here for a 1 month, 1 year relationship. I want this to be multiple years. And same with partners. Your partners and partnerships that you have, those are true partnerships. Not based on one project, go away. But you want those long-term. How do we create value for each other? I, as the customer, need to tell my partners, here is the direction that I'm going. But then I also need to hear from my partners, what direction are they going? And how are they trying to help me? And what's the right direction for that particular partnership, that we can learn from each other, make each other better within that overall pillar of consistency. As Satya Nadella said, that consistency over time is trust, or equates trust. Very simple way to spell that out, but a very powerful quote by a well-respected individual. So within that consistency, there's some different strategies to ensuring that consistent communication and actions to build that trust. First, talked about establishing those clear policies and procedures, making sure things are documented and you follow those. But then at the same time, documentation or policies can be very verbose. Not dozens upon dozens of pages, hundreds upon hundreds of policies and procedures, and depending upon what part of the organization you're in, you need training programs, and not just one-time training programs of, oh, I was onboarded and I went through the values and the mission statement for the company, but the organization, great, but you need some sort of regular interval, especially as we were talking about creating that trust or building more trust, that clear communication. Doing that through training and reinforcement programs really helps all employees to understand and then to adhere to these policies and procedures. And that unified messaging from that consistency, whether you're talking about internal or external communications, to customers, to partners, to employees, to just within teams, really helps build your brand at the end of the day. A brand of openness, trustworthiness, a brand that over time will start to draw in and use as a recruiting tool for employees, use as a means for customers or prospects to find you, to do more business, to support your cause more and more. Your brand is your voice at the end of the day. In that regular and transparent updates, scheduled, not just once a year, once a quarter, and in different means. Some people like to listen to phone calls. Some like to watch videos on their own time, especially in a large global organization. Naturally, you're going to have people in every time zone or many time zones. It's just not possible to have everybody on a call or meet at one time or one place. So written, you have an intranet, other documents, and to really have each layers of the organizations communicate to their teams on a frequent basis, and to be that consistent and unified message of the what and the why, and how does it relate to my team, my department, me as an individual employee. That's up to the different layers of management within an organization in order to ensure that unified messaging. But then you have to break that down naturally into your particular function within the organization, which is really that aligning leadership. Yes, there's aligning that executive leadership with that vision, like unified messaging, but there's leadership at all levels of the organization that have varying degrees of leadership. And those degrees are the number of people, the function within their organization, but it all should be aligned accordingly. Then the third pillar is integrity. When you think of, well, what's the importance of integrity and trust? It's really, integrity in the business refers to the adherence to moral and ethical principles. All right. It's really fundamental to building that trust as stakeholders rely on the company's commitment to doing what is right. But it's that honesty and fairness in all the activities. Because that honesty is part of that transparency. Businesses with the integrity are transparent and honest in their communications and operations, ensuring those stakeholders receive the accurate and truthful information in a timely manner, of course. Because that also leads to aligning with ethical decision-making. That integrity moves making those decisions that are not only legally compliant, but also ethically sound. And that approach reassures the stakeholders that the company prioritizes ethical considerations over short-term gains. And there's a constant pull of, if you're a publicly traded company or somebody wants things to move faster, well, let's cut corners. Well, let's do something that we wouldn't normally do that goes against our moral or ethical code. That's fine. We're going to go ahead and bend the rules. That might work well one time in the short term, but over the long term, people will see. And those are the stakeholders, internal and external, that are going to see, oh, we don't have integrity. We also don't have consistency. If you're looking to make unethical considerations in the short term, that doesn't lead to very consistent behavior at all, other than you're willing to cut any corner and do whatever it takes. Yes, there definitely needs to be a do whatever it takes attitude at times where we have grit. We have grit to get things done, to move things forward, to think differently, to ask the why, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep going. Keep moving the organization forward in that consistency. Because really, when leaders, whether those are executives or managers or a team lead for an individual project or you yourself, when everyone hones in on these different skills, is really when we bring this all together and the organization is able to thrive and innovate because it has an environment of trust. That trust has been built, whether that's through your brand or your employees. They have trust. You have trust in the employees. It doesn't mean we don't need to check in and understand how are things performing, can things be done better. But it really is a critical part of leading any organization or any part of an organization or any team at any time. So when you think of where we go from here, talk about, more importantly, and most importantly, when you talk about where trust is lacking today in your organization or your team, it's not at a point of criticism. It's having the empathy to say, here's an area that we could do better. Now let's figure out together, how can we do better? Do we just need additional policies and procedures? If you do a retrospective on a project, whether that project went well or didn't go well, there's definitely lessons learned and things that you can put in place to do better. Not just talk about, well, here's what we would have done better if we did that project a second time. Pretty rare do you get an opportunity to do a project a second time. Or that project has some sort of a natural life to it that even though it's a successful project, you have to do it every X number of years. There definitely are lessons learned, but it's more importantly of looking forward to the next time either a project, a similar project, or perhaps a team or a set of technologies are leveraged. Here is what we're going to do different. And establishing those, write them down, define them, document them. Because that's really how you're going to build that trust. Not just thinking about where you're lacking trust, not just talking about how to build the trust, but then to actually go and build that trust. You may have some questions. We're happy to talk to you about those. Thank you for attending this webinar or for watching this webinar on replay. We hope you check out many of our other webinars. If you have any questions, feel free to connect with us on social media or via our website. And we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. Thank you.